last month, Time Warner CEO Jeff Bewkes said he would look to split up the media giant's AOL unit and even consider selling the one-time online kingpin. Such a deal is not the corporate legacy former Time Warner CEO Jerry Levin envisioned when he engineered the marriage of old media lion Time Warner and new media darling AOL nearly 10 years ago. Currently, Levin is the director of Moonview Sanctuary, designed to promote not corporate wellness, but personal wellness. And Levin joins us now for Money for Breakfast this morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Good morning, Alexis. How are you?
I'm terrific. You sound like you're doing terrific. You know, given what you have been witnessing, particularly over this past 6 months, you've created this sanctuary for executives to go and get some well-needed advice. What are you telling them?
Well, I think it's time to pay attention to their personal core, their interior, and not simply their identity as an executive or as a CEO. Because if they can find some balance and some stability and understand their purpose and their true identity, I think that'll make them a more complete person and put some real balance back in their careers and personal lives, something that I think is terribly important in these tumultuous times.
You know, when you look at your rise and then your downfall post the AOL merger, you're one of the most revered executives, and you're seeing what's happening to executives across the globe, particularly what we've seen over the past 6 months to many of the financial institutions. There's a point right now where people don't have a lot of faith in the executives running corporations. They're concerned about transparency. They're concerned about greed. What do you tell them in an environment like this to make sure that they are as honest and upfront with their shareholders as possible?
Let's have some bravery on the part of our CEOs, those who have the role of chairman of the board, to stand up and say it's time for companies to pay attention to the public interest so that we don't leave that simply in the hands of government.
Right.
But ultimately, this economy is run by corporations who, basically are driving this economy. And what we're also finding, those who thought, this was the decline of the American empire, can see that, when we get the sinus infection here, it affects everyone needs antibiotics around the world. So this American consumer drives this world.
So let me ask you this question. So, Mr. Levin, let me ask you this question then. The way we select leaders to run corporations, do we need to change the way we select them and put them in that position? A lot is being discussed about golden parachutes and executive compensation, but do we need to rethink the people we put in charge of today's corporations?
When I gave Wall Street speeches, first, content was king, and then distribution was king, and then cash was king, and finally I concluded that character was king. Mm-hmm. That it actually matters. The way we're scrutinizing our presidential candidates, let's scrutinize those who eventually want to run major corporations, to take a look, their personal lives, their belief systems, their attitudes, their stability, their balance are actually very important, what they believe in.
We talked earlier about Jeff Bewkes talking about whether or not he should split up or whether they would consider splitting up the company that you formed between AOL and the media portion of it. You tell me, you've listened to this every day. What do you think? Is that a wise idea? Has the framework changed?
What he's doing is what I think a good CEO should do, and that is take a look at the current environment. Basically we put in place, starting with HBO and then Warner Brothers and the Turner Networks, and then AOL to take us into the digital and internet world, which obviously the digital technology is basic and fundamental now to all businesses. Whether the particular cultural clash that came with AOL was really positive or not, I think history will ultimately make that judge. And basically, this is what I think retired CEOs should do, and that is let the next generation, because life is very different 10 years after basically we put together that transaction.
Do you think that will still be the story, that content is king?
It's all about stories and relating to the stories of people's lives and that's what movie making is all about. And these stories never decrease in value like some mortgage-backed securities we're looking at now. These stories continue to increase in value because what inevitably happens, there are new technologies, there's new international distribution. We've gone from putting movies in the theater to video on demand, which is something we also help pioneer.
Well, great way of summing that up. Just quickly before we go, Moonview Sanctuary, tell me why you got behind this and what it can do for executives out there.
Well, I married into the business, or I married the boss, let's put it that way. And at the same time, it became clear that I could put my life at the service of others in an institute that really is designed to deal with not only crisis and depression and addiction and life-altering diagnoses, but also to help people get focus and balance, whether they're a CEO or a performer, an athlete, a politician, to help those who have some responsibility in our society really get a hold of their core purpose. And I can't tell you how satisfying it is to work on the stories of people's lives, whereas I used to be in the business of fictional stories.
All right. Well, Mr. Levin, it was a great pleasure talking to you, and it sounds like a great pursuit. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this morning.
Thank you, Alexis.